we tend to look. We don't just look at who's the most popular. Like we actually look at both. I'll say it's actually a pretty good range of possibilities in terms of. It's a pretty good range of possibilities. So we look at both diversity, inclusion, gender, who's already in sort of from the IP, who we can make, frankly, a very cool character from. If there's ideas we have that might actually apply to a different character. It's a pretty extensive process, but at the same time, in the end, it pretty much comes down to, all right, is this going to be a character that the fans fall in love with? And if yes, okay, let's do it. If not, we go back to the drawing board until we find one that actually does. So it's a very sort of detailed and dedicated process. Yep.
Those characters you did select, can you talk about, like, you know, what elements of them you think the fans will identify the most, why they should be excited?
So, obviously there's a little something for everyone in terms of, like, the full character range. I'm a huge fan of just DC and Justice League, so, like, being able to cast Kevin Conroy, being able to cast George Newborn, being able to cast just Wonder Woman overall, looking at them and sort of just seeing, here's the sort of starting core. They weren't the first character we developed. That is more like saying, if this is the first folks you're actually going to start with, what does that sort of radiate out from for each IP? So, Game of Thrones, this could be Jon Snow, this could be Arya. Hanna-Barbera, that could be Yogi, that could be Jabberjaw, that could be a bunch of the other characters. Really being able to kind of go through and figure out what fantasy will be served by this character and what fantasy is going to basically entice that fan and that player the most. That's typically where we actually dive in and say, all right, we think this is a better feel, we think this is a better feel, and kind of go from there. Again, we believe in representation, we believe in diversity, we believe in inclusion. All of our IP run the gamut of that, like through our 99-year history, so being able to sort of bring that and express that very, very important.
What was there's certain characters that you have, like Arya Stark was a huge one that I was excited for. Mm-hmm. Was there certain characters that was harder to get onto the roster?
No, not necessarily. Like, it's one of those cases where, like, as a fellow huge Arya Stark fan, we were just really excited to be able to get and work with Maisie, and she was amazing. So it's one of those cases where when we look at the roster and who can be in it, it's a long list. So it's good times.
For player first games, a lot of industry veterans on that team, but at the studio, their first rodeo.
Yep.
How did that relationship come about, and what makes them the right team for this project?
So the team basically is both, like, really, like, I can gush about these guys all day. So I'll try and narrow it down to like one or two things. I think the very first thing is that there's an understanding of how you have to treat a player base, period. That understanding comes at different levels and comes at different scales. It's very different to treat a player base of 1,000 versus a player base of 100 million. The core of the studio pretty much comes from It's League of Legends. That's one of the most popular games in the history of gaming, basically. Understanding sort of that pedigree and understanding what they really bring to the table. It's a player-first mentality, literally a player-first mentality, as well as just insane amounts of creative output and creative sort of solutions to different problems we have, not just design. So in working with the team, and really it's been just a fantastic relationship, and watching the team both not just grow, but sort of excel, exceed, and finally the game being able to come out and all sort of celebrate that reception has been pretty fantastic. That's a loaded question. Because if I answer it, you will have a character. So I'll say we're here today to talk about the current roster. We have a lot of characters coming, and I'm excited about basically all of them. I grew up watching a lot of these shows. I grew up literally, like, we were running home at 2 o'clock to get home to watch On Leather Wings from Batman animated series. Like, I didn't know there was a new Batman series coming out until someone literally at school was like, are you going to see the new? I was like, what do you mean? It starts in 10 minutes. Gone. So when we talk about that kind of thing, I love art. When I look at, say, Garnett's songs, like just watch them on YouTube and sing, she has a line she says to Batman where she sings it, and it's, I think you're just mad because you're single. So, for those that know Steven Universe and sort of understand that, it's one of those cases where, yeah, it's just ecstatic. So, if you're sensing that this is a hard question to answer, yeah, it is, because I love them all, and because we can really sort of say, okay, who is next, and it's a real question and conversation, sky's the limit. It's going to be fun. Yeah. Like Velma? Yes. Yeah.
So what can you talk about the challenge of that?
Oh, sure. So I'll say, obviously, we have a lot of characters with, we'll say, very easily to imagine how this character will fight in a fighting game. And other ones, not so much. So, again, with Velma, her thing is her brain. Like, she's not going to get in and no, that's not her. It's not her style at all. At the same time, the core of her skills comes from her being really smart, helping her team, and that unbelievable sass. So she literally attacks you in game with sass. Like, she shouts out word bubbles, the sass hits you, etc., etc. So it's a very completely different sort of way to actually interpret, well, what would a detective actually play like in MultiVersus? It's like different example. She has a passive ability called snooping. Snooping basically has you collect like little miniature clues around the map. When you get 5, what does Velma do when it's time for the episode and we figured out who the villain is? She calls the police. So she calls the police on you in game. It reveals you as Old Man Jenkins. The cop car comes to get you and traps you for a little while and will attempt to drive your ass off the stage if you don't try and get out of it. That basically is like, wait, this is a Scooby-Doo episode. Yes. Like, exactly. So understanding, like, again, like, this goes back to the creativity we were talking about. Understanding that's how we sort of interpreted what would be being a detective is like. That's a lot of that. Yeah, sometimes the ideas don't work, but most of the time we've been able to at least push them to a state where they do, or we've been able to find something else that does work. So it's a lot of work, it's a lot of process, but we think we've been doing it pretty good so far. Oh, so there were some surprising interactions. Maisie actually mentioned one because when she came in, she was like, she didn't necessarily know what kind of game it was at first, and we actually told her. And she was like, I have to insult Bugs Bunny. It's like, yeah, no, you are Arya Stark, and this is Bugs Bunny. You must murder him. It's like, so just sort of seeing a lot of that interaction, and obviously our players have picked up on a lot of it. That's actually one of the moments that will make us laugh out loud at some of the lines. Like, Bugs actually does have a line towards Arya where he actually will the North remember that after knocking her out. So it's like it gets interesting, and some of those cuts get pretty deep. So it's good times.
What role do you see original characters playing on this roster in and amongst all these iconic IPs?
So Rain Dog is a unique element, or he's a unique character, obviously, because he's built for the actual title. And it's one of those cases where him in particular, he is 100% based around co-op. So as a way for basically new folks to actually get into the title and things like that, that's also a very good character to just play as, because it gets you used to basically protecting your teammate, always being aware of your teammate, working with your teammates, so on and so forth. So if there's ever a need like that has to be addressed in the future, we take a look at it. For now, I think we're going to be focused much more on the sort of full run of lots and lots and lots of folks.
Thank you so much. If you liked that video, make sure to like and subscribe.
Subscribe to our Patreon where you get our reactions a week early, uncut before it goes to YouTube.
You can book us on Cameo, where you can make Hannah sing happy birthday.
I will not be singing happy birthday. You can ask us to say hello, a small reaction request, or make Hannah sing happy birthday.
Our merch store is now up with brand new designs coming, as well as our old designs brought to you by my Manic Episodes.
Thank you for that.
Make sure to check out our OnlyFans.
Oh my god! Subscribe to our OnlyFans for a different side of fandom reactions.
And be sure to follow our Twitter and Instagram at FandomReactGirls for daily updates.